Hi, folks. So, when I embarked on the Peanut Project, I was blown away by the amount of fans and supporters both north and south of the border. One gentleman, Matt Bomberg, was kind enough to introduce me to Dan Evans, who was the assistant GM with the White Sox, the GM with the Dodgers, CEO of the Field of Dreams Corporation. And over the past few months, we've probably had dozens and dozens of conversations, exchanging ideas. And when he was in town, I met him for breakfast, gave him a tour of the city, some of the different possible baseball locations. And if it wasn't for me babysitting a sick dog, Farfel, probably we would have done a Q&A like the one I did with former mayor Denis Kadev. But the man's got so much interesting insights, and I think for the Montreal community and fans, it's just a great vantage point because it's an outsider who was part of the MLB community and hopefully will one day be again, if and when the Expos come back. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I asked him many things, including handicapping each city that is vying for an expansion franchise. Hope you enjoy it. Dan, it was really nice to see you in Montreal. I hope you enjoyed our beautiful city. And I know I gave you a bit of a tour, didn't take you through everything I wanted to, but showed you, enough. So forget baseball for a moment. I just want to know what were your impressions of the city? And I know you'd been there before, but this time a bit different.
A spectacular town. Quebec, Canada, fabulous. But Montreal is so unique, and it's a word that's used, I think, too often. But in this case, it really applies. It's a huge metropolis with so much history and so much North American history, but also considerable baseball history. I went to the Jackie Robinson ballpark site. It was spectacular. Old Montreal, the neighborhoods. It was just a wonderful experience. Took the metro the whole time, 25,000 steps or more for 5 straight days. So I really feel good about the town.
Burn off that big breakfast. Okay. So let's get into it. You've worked at two very high level organizations, the Chicago White Sox, who for baseball reference were in the AL, Montreal was in the NL, National, and the LA Dodgers. What did each of those organizations teach you about what it takes to build a successful baseball operation?
Well, I grew up in Chicago, so I had the history of the White Sox and the Cubs. And working in a 2-team town like Chicago or Los Angeles is a really valuable experience because you see different methodology and you also see every team in baseball on an annual basis in the city. I think one of the great things about working for both teams is their charter franchises of their respective leagues. There's expectations that come with it, a very high bar in both cases. And you have ownership of on and off the field community and contribution to the city and to the region, which I really value because you're not just playing 81 home games, you're a presence 365 days a year. One of the things that I really enjoy is being able to contribute in a really positive way off the field to things that matter to people in the community. One of the things I really enjoyed about being in Montreal is the number of Montreal Expos t-shirts and hats that were prevalent. The team hasn't been there for more than 23 years. And subsequently, what we have is a culture that remains even though the team doesn't. And it's a good indication of what a city does. They embrace a baseball team and live and die with it on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true that the Expos, I see the caps, I see the T-shirts even when I travel, and even our producer Yvonne was mentioning, he's like, I saw one in the store in Mexico, in Mexico, and I wanted to go buy it, but lo and behold, he was like, it sold out. So, okay, now, when we connected, we were introduced by somebody, and then I kind of took a look at your LinkedIn just to understand who's this gentleman. One thing that stood out was the Field of Dreams experience you had. So I'd love to know. First of all, explain what it was because it's not obvious. It was, some baseball fans remember what the organization was, not just the movie, but then also how it ties baseball nostalgia. Just kind of bringing it all together.
I had a wonderful experience to be the chief operating officer of the Field of Dreams movie site. Prior to that, I was consulting for the ownership group of the Field of Dreams. And it's a movie based in It started in 1989. It's one of the most popular baseball movies, but it's a feel-good movie. But Ash, it's a town of 4,300 people in the middle of Iowa. It's not easy to get to, but it's really hard to leave. People come from all over the world to come play catch, to enjoy time, to scatter ashes, to walk around with loved ones. Phones get turned off. All of a sudden, when you cross a little bridge, the whole world kind of shuts down and you enjoy the familiarity of quiet, of family, of baseball, of softball. Some of my greatest memories are meeting people from all over the world, rounding the bases, some people in wheelchairs and walkers, some people playing with their grandkids. My task was to take this wonderful site and try to evolve it further into a worldwide destination and into a place where we could play a Major League Baseball game. Now there's been 3 games. There's been 6 games total played since I was there. It was an extraordinary experience. Frank Thomas, a Baseball Hall of Famer, and I were tasked with the responsibilities, and we loved it. I really enjoyed my time there. When your day involves grabbing a glove and going out and talking to people, it's a really wonderful thing. And one of my partners was Baseballism, who are a worldwide brand. And boy, we had so much fun. The interview with them was them trying to turn double plays and hit balls into the corn. And Ash, when that's your environment, it's a really comfortable place to call home. It was a glorious time for me and one that I'll never, ever forget.
Yeah, I mean, my job is ranking movies and songs, right? So some jobs seem too good to be true, and that might probably top my job in a list. Okay, so in that first conversation we had, not to put words in your mouth, but at least anecdotally, directionally, you said something to the effect of the only job that, the only MLB job that would really interest you would be an expansion opportunity. So why? Take us through that.
Well, I've been very lucky. I've worked with 5 teams and the Field of Dreams in a 4 decade plus period, and really enjoyed the cities I was in, and enjoyed the tasks that I was given and the roles that I had, leading a baseball organization, trying to win a World Series as often as possible and being competitive. But an expansion team is so unique. They happen every 3 decades or so. You get to create a culture, an environment. You get to build from really day one and build a culture that addresses the community on a daily basis of who you are, who you're going to be, and what we stand for as a community. You embrace the city, you embrace the neighborhoods, you become part of the very fabric of who they are. You don't inherit anybody's issues from the past, which, Ash, candidly, I did that my entire career. You inherit the sins of the past, some of them your own, and now you get to build a culture, hire a staff, come up with a process that yields terrific results for years to come. But most importantly, a city like Montreal deserves to start from anew and come with a new concept of what the Montreal Expos and a major league franchise should look like, to really embrace the return of the Expos and not dwell on things that occurred in the past, but correct some of those mistakes, realize what they were, identify them, act on them, and come up with a better plan, a better project.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said I was the reluctant entrepreneur, but building an organization, creating a culture is probably one of the things I'm most proud of. And you know what? Sometimes fans will reach out to me and they're like, okay, like Tampa Bay might be back into play, or why don't you go? And I'm like, first of all, I think Tampa Bay, given the history, would be not necessarily tampering or collusion, but I feel if like a Montreal group got involved again, it probably wouldn't look good to the powers that be. But I won't lie, in a very self-serving and maybe even selfish way, I'm like, no, I want to build something from scratch. I'm sure there's a lot of great people at these organizations. Tampa Bay, like obviously they run a world-class operation. They have other challenges, but I'm like, I want to build something from scratch. And the irony is, if I do my job well and land the right investor.
If I could just say one thing, a lot of people would be afraid of an opportunity like that, but I embrace it. I think it's an awesome experience to be able to surround yourself with people in a collaborative way and come up with, who are we as a franchise? Who will we be to serve the community? and what type of player and what type of person do we want with us in this collaborative effort. The great thing about that is you start with everybody on the same page, and it's really easy once you get everybody together to carry out what you want to do when everybody starts from the same vantage point. And I think the collaborative nature is something that I've always done in every team I've been in, but this is unique. And it's a city and a province that's so unique in North America. It's unlike any other in Major League Baseball. I think it would be a really great place to recruit players and recruit front office talent at the same time.
I usually wear a black shirt, not just because it's like uniform, but because then if later on we want to stitch different sound bites, it doesn't look jarring. Today I should have maybe been more neutral. I was going to put you on the spot, but look, as I've said, I'm more of an agent. I'm happy to be a minority investor, partner, et cetera, whatever it takes if asked to do so. But I would not have gotten involved if I thought it was a long shot, So I'm obviously not suicidal, but yeah, we are like masochists, It's like when Steve Jobs talks about the misfits and the rebels. To some people, they might see a burning house. I'm like, great, let's go fix it up. So I get it, but I understand to many people. So obviously, like to an operator entrepreneur like me, I understand starting something fresh, like analytics, scouting, player development, international technology, everything, culture. But what is the most important one that you think? Because I don't doubt that it's easier. Like, obviously, it's good to have a base, but you get baggage with a base. But give me like the top two things that you think are more important than any other, and an expansion team is actually better positioned to capitalize on.
Well, first of all, I'm very blessed. Throughout my career, I have had an opportunity to work in every bit of the baseball environment, on and off the fields. Subsequently, I do know what it looks like. I know what it sounds like. I may not be able to play the cello, but I know what it sounds like, and I know what it should be. To me, there's two really important things. One is have a high bar from day one about how you act, the professionalism, and how you contribute to the community on a daily basis. We cannot control winning or losing. That's something that nobody has any instrumentation that's ever been able to figure out how to do it. But you can control who you are to your city, to your province, to your country. We always wear that city on our uniform, and we owe it to the city and its people to have a very high bar of who we are. I think that's number one. But number two, it's a process that respects all the components that are involved: scouting, player development, analytics, marketing, broadcasting, just everything about a major league team comes into play. And when you start from scratch, as you said, what you can do is relinquish the power struggle and begin a process that respects and understands the collaborative nature. And when you're all pulling in the same direction, two things occur. Number one, nobody is there as a naysayer balking at who you are. And two, we get to always evolve. And evolving in a city as culturally unique as Montreal will be extraordinary. Sure, there's old Montreal, but outside of old Montreal, there's amazing new things. What I'd love to do is create an environment where we respect some of the great things about baseball in Montreal, dating back to the Royals, dating back hundreds of years, but more importantly, embracing the now and who we want to be and how we want to get there.
So let's set aside money. And I think 260 odd days ago, even I thought, even being a finance pro, I was like, yeah, capital is going to be hard. And then you kind of as I said, not to take any credit, it was like Christopher Columbus. I arrived and I'm like, oh, there's this sports business ecosystem, and even I think with the ultra high net worth individuals, I'm now in my fifth profile of potential investors. Even now I'm telling wealthy families, I'm like, look, one guy was like, I wish my son would have brought this to me, effectively, to condense a conversation. I was like, why do you say that? And he was like, well, it would be great to do this with him. And I was like, well, what's stopping you? And he was kind of like, well, aren't you and I was like, no, I'm an architect. I could disappear. I could also support your son. So it's kind of like, you talk about old Montreal, and I think you meant more like not just old Montreal, but Quebec Inc. and the culture that makes it unique. What makes Montreal still a foundationally strong city is what sometimes prevents this kind of project from going from concept to reality. But I agree. I think as much as there are reasons why this can't happen or maybe won't happen, there's many more why it can, should, and probably will if I just stay at it. You know what I mean? It's not my decision, but it's the fundamentals are there. So let's set aside money. What is the main success criterion or requirement for an expansion organization to succeed, aside from money?
Stability. Stability in game plan, in direction, in ownership, relationship with the city, the province, the country, understanding your role in the community, but also a game plan when it comes to a minor league operation, how you're going to set up your front office, what your entire operation is going to look like, and the collaborative nature of the departments working together. I think the control person is a really critical element from an ownership standpoint. There has to be a singular individual that people report to ultimately, that Major League Baseball has lofty expectations for, to be an owner operator in the community, not just saying hello to people when they come in the ballpark, but when the city has adverse things going on, be a community activist to be there and be there for the people in need. I think the other thing, Ash, is really simple. You have to be reactive. You have to be flexible. You have to understand as your city goes through a situation like a pandemic or goes through a situation where there's, a dire need of something going on in the community, you have to be ears to the ground and understand not only where you live, but your role in that community and the joy you can bring to people. I mean, when you're getting on the metro to go to the ball game, you're on the train with a lot of people who aren't going to the same stop as you, but you're all moving in the same direction. When you're with a baseball team and a dilemma comes up, a lot of those people can't do anything about that situation. But with a baseball team, you have a magical situation where you can make a difference in people's lives. And I think that's something that people don't realize, but it's clear that it's not just those 81 home games, but it's the days in the off season at a children's hospital. It's supporting school initiatives. It's being there and always being a part of the everyday life of people who live in the community.
When a lot of fans say, well, why doesn't somebody like the Montreal Canadiens owner, Jeff Molson, do this? I'm like, the poor guy, well, not poor, I mean, like the great citizen of our city, he's already stabilized and brought back the Montreal Canadiens to be the team that we know that they were and could be. He oversees 80 plus games over the winter. In the summer, he's got free agency, he's got the draft. The man would probably also want to take a mini vacation. You can't ask him to also now inherit 160 games, of which 80 plus are at home. And then everything that you said, the community stuff, the civic, So I do think sometimes fans overestimate certain things, which takes me to misconceptions. I oftentimes get people asking questions. And again, like I studied finance, I work in media. There's so many more things I don't know. But sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a reminder that, yeah, not everybody necessarily gets how business works or the world of sports business. And that's not a fault. It's just as humans, we each have a comparative advantage. But what do you think is a misconception that fans think matters to MLB, but actually in this eventual expansion process probably is overrated or not really that big of a deal? Let's get that out of the way before talking about the stuff that.
Well, first of all, we haven't had a round of expansion in Major League Baseball for more than 20 years. The game has changed so much during that period. We have monumental change within the game from a global growth. The World Baseball Classic didn't exist. Now it's probably the best thing about baseball. We didn't have streaming ability. Now we have it all over the world. I've been on a street corner in Tokyo watching a game live at 8 o'clock in the morning that involved my team. It was an extraordinary experience. That did not exist in the last round of expansion. So whatever the ownership committee in Major League Baseball details as to their priorities for the next round of expansion, Montreal is a global community. It has business, it has culture, it has history. And if you think about it, Ash, it's the city that broke the color barrier for Jackie Robinson. In 1946, what city did Branch Rickey and the Dodgers decide was the city to go to? It was Montreal. And that city has just gotten better, more inclusive, more diverse, more amazing. We have a sport where over 20 nations are represented. Our community in Montreal would be unbelievable because people would feel comfortable in Montreal, unlike probably any other North American community. The history of the city is monumental. But when ownership gets together, what do they look at? They look at business, they look at support, they look at things to do. Is it a place that fits geographically? Does it fit in a divisional standing? Do they have a love? Do they have stability? You can check a box in each case with the city of Montreal and Quebec province. And that's what, when we had our first conversation, drew me in, because I thought, wow, having been there before the Expos left, it's a great city. And now, after being there, I recognize how great a city it is today.
Yeah, and for like the critics or naysayers who may be like, Dan, you're here for a weekend. To be fair, when we were driving around, I kind of took you through the challenges that Montreal has, but I also explained any city. If you and I would have met in New York or Chicago or LA, London, Barcelona, like every city has challenges. But I agree that if you objectively look at Montreal baseball, the sports world, the conditions are so unrecognizable from 2004 that, yeah, I do think Montreal just needed a bit of an instigator and catalyst, but it's not impossible, and we're making it inevitable, so to speak. Okay, I'm going to
Mhm.
rank a number of things. I'm going to enumerate a number of things, and you're going to tell me what is most important to MLB to least. Not saying not, but just least. Ownership, capital, stadium site, the market, government support, and fan support. So there's 6 things there, from most important to least important.
Wow. I didn't write them down, so I don't have them right in front of me, but I think you have to start with ownership and stability. It's just really important, particularly in light of what occurred in 2004 with the Montreal franchise. I think it taught baseball a lesson, followed by the Dodgers' experience later on when they had an ownership issue. The stability of the franchise and its ownership is paramount to the success not only of the baseball team, but also of the game itself and its 30 to 32 entities with expansion. So that's really important. I think buy-in from the community is so important, because if people that are in the civic world and in the business community in the region are into the community project being a baseball team, it adds 81 days a year where they can conduct business and they can get behind an opportunity. How many of those exist? We have twice as many home games in baseball as hockey does. I think back to the semifinals, how the entire city just stopped and everybody was watching the Canadians try to get to their first Stanley Cup final in a while. Well, that was a community event. I mean, all the live saw, and I'm a hockey fanatic. I mean, Ash, that was amazing. You saw the community pull together. Well, that just doesn't happen for home games. People are wearing Habs shirts everywhere, hats everywhere, and it's the summertime. That doesn't it's not a casual relationship with the team. Please give me those items again, and I can think about them a little bit further.
No, I mean, but actually, it's interesting because I enumerated owners, market, capital, stadium, government, and fan, and you started with ownership, which I agree makes a lot of sense, like ceteris paribus, all factors being equal. But then you kind of added, I think, given Montreal, that's the thing. Like I have a lot of advisors, I have a lot of whispers with the league, and one of them was like, I think it's in general, it's the market, because obviously, a bigger market lifts the average for everybody.
Mhm.
The Lakers sale at 12.5 billion, it basically gave a lift to every other franchise, even if they're private assets, right? So I do get that. So I would have thought it was more the market in that Montreal gets, but we have to overcompensate with the ownership and then the
Mhm.
state. Whereas like I think of the other things, of course, fan support, but in Montreal, fan support is there, like it's the history, the
Mhm.
legacy. It's like the risk is extracted, I believe. Like as a finance guy, if I'm MLB, I'm like, well, Montreal, that's not an uncertainty. But I do think government support, not to defend the three levels of government, I do think that the major league is like, this is Montreal, this is Quebec, this is Canada. They're savvy enough to even know that, yeah, here the average person lives to work, not works to live. They love the market. They're not going to expect a Hail Mary from government. They just want government to support it. So I think like we have
Mhm.
to overcompensate everything else. The ownership has to
Mhm.
be airtight. The stadium has to be airtight. But let's not dwell on this because there's a lot of other stuff I want to ask you about.
Ash, if I could, can I say one thing about the stadium?
Yeah, please.
The stadium experience in 2026 is so different than it was in 2004. Not just in Montreal and not just with the Olympic Stadium. What we've evolved to as a game now is places that are destinations, not just a place to play a baseball game at 7:05. It's a place to come to early, have a meal, perhaps conduct business, go to a movie, and go there not only on the 81 home dates, but any of the 365 days during the year. What that does is it develops a relationship with the community that's not just game centric. So when the Expos left in 2004, that did not exist at the Big O and it did not exist in the community. But the vision that you have involves a center, a hub, a destination where, yes, a game's going to be played, but it's not just game centric, it's destinational in nature. People embrace that. And what people love is they know, the community knows, yeah, there's a game being played, but more importantly, that's their 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And that thought process has literally changed communities and changed cities for the better. And the game has embraced it as a result. I know your vision for that, and it's very much embracing that thought process.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you should be our PR guy. But yeah, basically, so early on in the process, Elias Makos, who was the former PR guy for the Expos, and he hosts a radio show in the morning, he was like, you should look at the battery. And I won't lie, I'm a student. So I saw the battery and I said, how do we, put this on steroids? So you're referring, of course, to 4C, the Creative Cultural Commercial Campus, which will have a museum, ACE, the Academy and School of Entrepreneurship, something I was going to do anyway as a teacher previously. And um, I think these days athletes don't want to just become coaches or broadcasters. They view themselves as
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and investors. So it resonates well. It's funny. When we actually met in person, we had chatted a few times, but I said, oh, to get a feel as an American, what it would be like to live here. I was like, maybe I could ask Jeff Molson if he could introduce you to Jeff Gorton, who's the president of hockey operations, former Bruins and Rangers exec. Like, again, hallelujah, there is a God. Like, again, all the talent we have now with the Canadians.
Mhm.
But I think almost he spoke to you to understand what he would be walking into because you really, really seem to know the city well. But anyway, so not surprised now, like considering all of our conversations. Okay, let's switch up. How important is it in the context of expansion for the other owners, commissioners as well, but that collective, the committee, to see like the baseball people, whether it's head of baseball operations, your GM, possibly head of business, head of stadium, like, those are, I think, the three key pillars: stadium operations, baseball, and business. Are those important, or it's nice to seize, but not like must have, so to speak?
Ash, I think they're difference makers because you're joining a thriving environment of 30 major league owners. And just like in any other business, there's good, there's bad, there's indifferent. If you're adding someone to this exclusive club that is really on the rise, you want to add a group that it really understands what it's like on a daily basis to run a baseball team from the business and the baseball side. It's imperative. This isn't a training wheels environment. You're talking about one of the 15 biggest cities in North America, but more importantly, one of the 32 teams in Major League Baseball. They don't want to add a problem They want to add a solution, a vibrant community and city. So your baseball group, and I'll speak strictly on the baseball side, a game plan of how you're going to intertwine scouting, player development, analytics, staffing, who you're going to be as a team, and how you're going to get to the finish line as a major league team, what your goals are on an annual basis. And I think one thing that I look and I seriously am excited about is the possibility of taking a collection of really talented people and point everyone in the same direction and just listen to get the best answers in the room. I don't pretend to be the smartest one in the room, but I'm going to be one hell of a good listener. But I think if ownership creates a process where the baseball operations is evident to be capable and competent from day one, it's a much easier sell instead of going, well, if we get the franchise, we have plans to do X, Y, and Z. It's pretty clear in our conversations how we would do it and how we would do it to have an elongated situation of success. We're not going to win the World Series every year. People just know that, but it's being competitive and competent, and you can do that with the right strategies.
Yeah, you're describing my last 20 years. That's how I say it. I go, we want the best ideas. Doesn't matter. You need to. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say I never wanted to say this, but I'll say it. The one X factor that I'm not the billionaire. I'm not the builder of a stadium. So in a way, it's like I'm a nobody, but pushing this ahead. But I'm like, if MLB saw how much I'm like not just CEO, but the janitor, the bottle washer will make sure I'm like, I do think that's going to come into play because I do think they don't like how they left Montreal, where not knocking anybody just because of the nature of the ownership group. There was, too many people claiming to be the chief, but really nobody ultimately being the leader and the guy or gal that's like, hey, we got to remedy this. And I've said it, segue to the next question, the same way that every person has some insecurity, regardless of their confidence. Each city now has an insecurity. Like Montreal, it's what happened in 2004. Can you get a stadium? I won't name the other insecurities of the other cities, but I would like, to the extent you're comfortable, to handicap the different cities. We could start in the West because conceivably, if you're going to add two teams, logic suggests one in the West, one in the East. So we'll come to the East where Montreal's in. But let's go. Let's look at Vancouver. Let's look at Salt Lake, Oakland, Sacramento, Portland, obviously, earlier on as well. So let's look at the West. What are your thoughts? You could talk about each one of them. Tell us, who do you think is the strongest candidate?
Ash, like any city in the world, they all have warts. And their warts are sometimes their own sins of the past. It's demographics, it's socioeconomic issues, it's lack of a ballpark, lack of ownership, lack of a good vibe. One of the things in our sport is that people know where they've been, but crave to know more about the places they haven't. So the teams that haven't had minor league or major league teams, they're really a mystery to a lot of people because their world for 9 months out of the year is traveling to support their job and, more importantly, to do their daily duties with their team. So Portland, for most people, is a city they haven't gone to for baseball. I'm old enough to have been there for AAA games. But there's a question about Portland because they just don't know the city. They haven't been there. Also, Ash, they haven't done winter meetings in Portland. So there's probably a real question mark about what are the positive characteristics of Portland. It's a terrific city. I love it. I have relationships there. But whether or not Portland is a major league team, I can't answer that question. They don't have a ballpark. They've never had a major league team. Vancouver, great location. Okay, it's beautiful. One of the great cities in the world. But their proximity to Seattle is problematic for a lot of people. How does that work? I'm not sure. As a former Mariner staff and a very proud Mariner alumni, I think there's some difficulties putting a team in Vancouver. But also, again, they've struggled when they've had exhibition games played in Vancouver. It's a great community, but I think there's just a lot of questions about ballpark, site, things like that. Salt Lake City has been an absolutely wonderful place for minor league baseball. It's a great hockey destination now. Very quickly,
Great
it's a
owner.
terrific place for basketball. Yes, and I think what we have is an awareness of Salt Lake City because of recent years. But it's another example. Salt Lake City hasn't hosted the winter meetings. People aren't really aware. They haven't gone there. So it's troublesome for some people. Oakland, people know Oakland. Whether the market can sustain a vibrant second team, there's a lot of questions because they've just experienced it. Sacramento's a terrific place, having lived in California for 15 years. But again, I'm just not sure that that's a major league city. They're doing really well right now, hosting the Athletics. But whether or not that's a permanent environment, I'm not so sure. But the West has a number of options. I think each of which have its pluses and its minuses. But the ownership committee and the expansion committee will review those very closely. What's really funny, Ash, is we really don't know everything that's going on with each one of those franchises. We only know what we're told and what we hear. And in some of those instances, they don't have environments that are very public in nature. So you're really not entirely sure what's going on.
I don't think any of those guys are as transparent as I am. But again, because I'm outside, as a private citizen leading a public initiative, if I'm part of a
Mm-hmm.
fraternity, there's confidentiality. Just want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to handicap one from the West, name the city. Who do you think is going
I
to
would say
emerge
Salt
victorious?
Lake City, and I would
Yeah,
say Portland.
okay, yeah, I think
Um,
Salt Lake for all the reasons you said. And again, as a Canadian, first of all, as a human, I don't wish ill on anybody. As a Canadian, I wish Vancouver well. I think Vancouver to MLB will just have to answer. You lost the Grizzlies. You might have lost the Whitecaps after what we did with what we saw with the Rays, the last expansion cohort. It's just not comfort.
mhm.
And then relative to Salt Lake, that has the ownership, has the capital, yada yada. So I think Salt Lake. Okay, let's look at the East now. Include
Mhm.
Montreal. Trash it. Be objective, obviously, and as I know you will. But then, yeah, let's talk Charlotte, Raleigh, Nashville, Orlando, even Buffalo. I've heard, but like I apologize if I'm omitting anybody, but would love to get your take on the East then.
Well, first of all, geographic alignment for divisions, these teams play real well because they can fit in various settings with various teams. The bulk of Major League Baseball is east of the Mississippi. So each of those teams check that box. Alignment geographically is likely to occur for a number of reasons, and each of those fit pretty well. Orlando, let's start. It's tough. There's already two teams in Florida. Neither one is vibrant. Orlando would be a really tough fit in a Florida market that already has two teams that they wish they were doing a little better. I like Orlando a lot. I've been in spring training a ton. I just think they have a very difficult task to overcome with the other two teams and what's become of them. Orlando's been a site for the winter meetings. People have an awareness, but they also have an awareness of what has gone on in Florida in general. When you look at Nashville, you have a site that's been the host of the winter meetings numerous times. People are aware of the city. It's a tourist attraction. Um, they have also they're building a stadium for the Titans, and they have said very publicly that they do not have the revenues to build a publicly financed stadium. So that becomes a major issue. Land becomes an issue. Also, no one has really stepped forward within the Nashville group to be a leader. It was Dave Stewart for a while, but Dave Stewart's no longer affiliated with that group. So they're kind of rudderless as they are right now. I mean, Nashville's a fun town. I like Nashville. But as far as their perception and their reality, I think they're two very different situations. They've proved to be a very good home for the Preds, but whether they can be a good home for a major league team, that for me is an uncertain situation. North Carolina is a real great minor league hub for Major League Baseball. Whether or not it's big enough to support a major league team, there's questions. Which region would they be? Would they be in the Triangle? Would they be Raleigh? Would they be Charlotte? Durham? Who knows where they would be? The problem, Ash, is I think with North Carolina is people usually don't look at North Carolina as one of the vibrant metropolises in North America and in the United States. As an American, I look at them as a terrific state, a fun state, but I don't look at any one particular city as the pole sitter, as the one that is the place you want to go. And I think that's going to be something that they're just going to have to figure out as a group. They have multiple efforts right now. I don't think multiple efforts are going to work. I think they're going to have to condense to one, and we don't know which one it would be, but that alone is a challenge from their own perspective. They have to decide where they're going to go. They don't have a ballpark. They have a minor league team that's done pretty well. It's a fun place to go, but whether or not it can be a major league environment is another question. When it comes to Buffalo, a city I know really well, I was involved with two different major league teams that had it as a minor league affiliate. Great environment, terrifically run minor league team, a good city. Weather's a huge problem. Weather, it's cold as heck up there. At many points of the spring, they would have to have a dome stadium. They would also have to have major business. And I don't think that really exists right now in Buffalo. It's a really good town. It's a region more than a city, and it works. And having been there for many years with minor league teams, it's not an easy city to get to. And when you have all the moves that you're making from fan base, from minor league situation, it's really hard to operate in an environment where you don't have the vibrancy of an airport in a community. And I think Buffalo will struggle in that area a little bit. I look at Montreal and I see such a unique situation. Plus in 1969, if you think about it, more than 50 years ago, Major League Baseball deemed it to be the better opportunity than Toronto, than other places that were looking. Its history, not only as a city, but as a baseball city, is extraordinary. I mean, it really is where Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. It is where people still talk vibrantly about, yet the team hasn't been around for 23 years. I think what they also have is a group of players that, no one in the game today, no active player ever played the Montreal Expos. It did not occur. They're all out. I think Bartolo Colon is the last player who was active to play in Montreal. But what we have is a number of retired players who speak fondly of Montreal. At a game the other night in Quebec City, I had a former player rave about Montreal. And it's funny how people, that's their image, and the city's just gotten better. The province has increased. The country is better than it was 23 years ago. So what you have now is a city that, has a history of baseball and has already been deemed a major league city. Well, that city's just evolved into a better city and a better opportunity than it was. And people will speak on its behalf who played there and played against the Expos during the years.
That's a great rundown. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think there is a big divergence between, what is written even by like journalists who could be very well informed and well intentioned. But as I've alluded to it, I think the commissioner doing his part like a decade ago throughout Nashville, for example. So the media runs with that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is aligned. And I'm just using Nashville as an example. Frankly, after about 120 days, we kind of addressed the Capitol. I was afraid, knowing myself, that I might not get bored, but just kind of be like, this is really a test of patience. But then I said, work on the land, stay busy, even if that's frustrating. But given how I'm wired, obviously, yes, I became an entrepreneur when the Expos left. I'm not looking for anything. I love hearing people saying I used to go with my granddad. I want to look forward to take my son. That's all really that I need, so to speak. But, entrepreneurs were weird. Like when I saw, for example, Tom Dundon, owner of the Canes and Portland Trailblazers now, and Mark Lassery, former owner of the Bucks, both individuals amongst the 100 that I probably reached out to at some point or another. When I saw them join, actually, it got me excited again, because I was like, oh, again, we're going to be the underdog, because these are two billionaire sports owners. But it wasn't just like being macho or anything, or being even overconfident. It's just as a competitor, as an athlete, I always say I'm more of like a entrepreneur who's like an entertainer or athlete in terms of thinking. Um, but I think it's great that these other cities actually now have actual owners behind them. These billionaire owners, more power to them, are more likely to go and ask for the state to give them money and all that. We have a
Mhm.
different approach, not counting on public money, because I think in Montreal that's both unethical and tone deaf. But it doesn't mean that the government won't support it, because if you're going to build a stadium and have 30, 40,000 people come, well, you need sewers, you need electricity, you need roads, right?
Mhm.
So there's ways to signal to MLB. But MLB again is unique. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what does MLB think of Montreal?
Well, Ash, I know just in the last few months when I talked to people, the people who went there when Montreal had a major league team loved it. The players who played there, and I've talked to a lot of them, many of them former players that were in an organization I was in, loved it. It's different. It's not your regular North American city. It's vibrant. The fact that it's French Canadian adds a completely different fabric of just about any city any baseball person has ever been to. The safety is huge, especially in today's world. But for me, the biggest thing, and it's huge, is the diversity in the city and the acceptance of the city. When you have as many nations reflected in major league uniforms as we do today, is there a more diverse city in North America than Montreal? Perhaps New York, perhaps Los Angeles. Those are anchor franchises in Major League Baseball. What you offer in Montreal is a situation where Major League Baseball can comfortably look at the Montreal effort and say, it'll be a great destination for all fans all over the world. And as a result, I think the global nature of the game will bring people to Montreal to come see a ball game, experience perhaps a minor league game in Canada, but more importantly, embrace a culture that's unique that they can't get anywhere else. Perhaps Quebec City. Well, that's different. That's very different. And when players start thinking about where they want to work and where their family's going to be, it's real easy to look at Montreal as a destination because when you walk the streets, it's evident that doors are open everywhere and you're not worried about coming in as a Dominican, as a Japanese player, as a Taiwanese player, as an American. You can come in and play. And I think the culture is so inviting and rewarding that I think it'll be a really entertaining situation. And Ash, one thing, there's nothing wrong with vanilla ice cream. People love vanilla ice cream, but nobody goes to an ice cream shop and orders vanilla ice cream. They go to get a flavor they can't get. When you come to the table in Major League Baseball and you're a former player, you remember your days of waiting for the bus before an Expos game from the hotel and the difference in sitting on the bench, walking back from the ballpark. I told you that when I was with you, walking back from the ballpark downtown was something I couldn't do in most every North American city. And I did it without hesitation in Montreal because I wasn't worried about crime. That was 23 years ago. Now it's even more pronounced in a lot of cities, and it's even less of an issue in Montreal. And I think those are things that people look for, but they also look for one other thing: who embraces the game and who loves the game. And I know one thing, just I know it when I was there. When the Expos were vibrant and the Expos had solid ownership, that fan base and that community just loved the heck out of the Montreal Expos. It was a really hard place to play in a ballpark that was anything but good. It was a really tough environment. And when you added the fan craziness, it was an awesome place to play. You knew you were in a hostile environment.
Yeah, no, some very good memories even at the Big O. Okay, I think I would love to keep talking, but I think your time is running out. So I would love one last question, which is, imagine we're not recording this. We're alone in the clubhouse at a park, sitting there. Nobody, you could be as candid as you'd like. So what feedback, guidance, criticism, whatever would you give me to change? Like the same way you might see a pitcher doing something, you're like, you got to stop this, or a batter. What feedback do you have for me in terms of what we've been doing so far?
Ash, I've been a baseball insider my entire adult life since I was a 20-year-old intern with the White Sox. And one of my first bosses, Roland Hemond, himself of French-Canadian descent, said to me, the most important thing you need to do in this game is to learn from the past, to learn from its vibrant history, and to learn from mistakes that have been made by your predecessors with the team, not only with the franchise, but in the city, in the community. What we've had in Montreal is a situation that we can't change. There's documentaries written about it. There's, elements that you can't be in denial. And we can never turn our back on what occurred, but we must learn from what occurred in Montreal and make sure it does not happen again. Because the rupture within the fan base was monumental. For a team to leave a community and get whisked away to another city is something that communities don't recover from. I mean, it's a terrible loss, which is why people are still wearing their Expos stuff. They still root for the Montreal Expos of 2004. Well, we need to learn, and you need to remember, that those things are still in the forefront of people's minds. What occurred wasn't pretty. It didn't roll off people's tongues. It was combative. They felt like they were wrestled away from, but it happened because the people who were in charge of the team didn't always have the best interests of the community in mind and didn't have a long-range strategy of success in Major League Baseball as a franchise. When you asked me early about community, you're a baseball team 365 days a year, not the 162 games you play and not the 81 home games. Stability, process, culture is something people are going to be wanting from day one. You've been very clear about who you are and who you want the team to be. Being able to articulate that will ease the concerns of not only Montrealers, not only people from Quebec, but people around the world who know what happened in Montreal. They're looking for stability again. They're looking for a cohesive game plan. They get that, they'll be all over it all over again.
Thank you very much for your time. You didn't have to be so polite. I was looking for more criticism, but nonetheless, right on about history. I had a great time.
I think you should have walked the stairs up to Montreal, because that would have been an impressive contribution on the tour.
Would have loved to, if I wasn't dog sitting Farful and making sure my beloved Liz wasn't traumatized. I think we would have spent a lot more time, but there will be a next time. So thank you. And again, you've been a great sounding board and sanity check over the last 200 some days. And again, when I say what the Peanut Project is definitely not, what's my thing? It takes one very driven, motivated individual to start a movement, but no movement is ever accomplished by a person. There's a lot of incredible people that are advising us and hopefully over time joining. So thank you for your time. And I'm sure there'll be a part 2.